Following on this episode of Law Weekly, a conversation with a retired judge of the Lagos High Court, Justice Sherifat Sholebo. We talk about issues of judicial remuneration and her journey to becoming a judicial officer. Also showing on this episode of the program, highlights from the 4th Annual General Conference, an International Women's Day event of the Nigerian Bar Association Women Forum. It had the theme, Beyond the Balance Sheet, Redefining Success for Women in Law. Now, against the background of the International Women's Month, we're still talking women and some of the issues that affect us, especially in the legal profession. My guest, Justice Sherifat Oloruntoyin Sholebo, retired gracefully from the bench of the Lagos Judiciary in November 2022 after a meritorious service which saw her serve in various capacities between 1999 and 2022, both as a magistrate and a High Court judge. She sat on many complex cases in areas of law, including general civil and criminal cases, land disputes, and economic crimes, to mention a few. She's well admired and mostly fondly remembered for presiding in the Family and Juvenile Court, where she adjudicated over matters affecting children, women, and families, and applying the law to protect the vulnerable in the society. A day before my interview with her, the news broke that the House of Representatives had approved President Tinubu's request to increase the salaries and allowances of judicial officers. So I began the interview by asking her if she thought the new figures are in tandem with present-day realities, especially considering that the last time salaries of judicial officers was increased was in 2008.
I wouldn't say that the new proposed increase in salary after how many years, 14, 15 years, is not better than what we are, the state we are now. Before I retired in 2022, the basic salary, the total emolument, excluding state allowance, was 560. So whatever is proposed, it looks like a leap. But is it reasonable considering the state of the economy, the rate of inflation, and the rate at which dollar is exchanged to the naira? No, it is not. It is even far from what judicial officers in Commonwealth countries earn. In 2006, I was at the land registry. I got an offer from Turks and Caicos to be a chief magistrate there on a basic salary of $5,000. You will wonder why I did not go. I did not, because my children felt I'll be too lonely. They are grown, they are ready with their families in UK, and they have their children, and they are not ready to release their children to me. So there will be nobody living with me. I will have been alone. To compound the situation, according to my son, I don't drink, I don't go clubbing, I don't do all these social things. So it's like, what would you do with your $5,000? You are going to buy frustration. I may fall into depression. So it was that made me not to take the offer. That was 2006. In 2018, I was opportune to be at Halifax in Canada for training as judicial educator. And on the last day of the training, judges from all over the Commonwealth sat, and we discussed a lot of things about our welfare and pay. The judges from other jurisdictions were shocked. At that time, our 500 and something was a little over $1,000. They were shocked to hear that that's what judges of the High Court in Nigeria earn. Nobody could fathom how we live and did even imagine how we feel the dignity attached to our office. I found out at that training that the least paid was $8,000, and these are judges from Botswana. Botswana is south of Africa. All the Caribbean islands, at least those present there, even the registrar of Dominican Island, earn $10,000 per month. So if you relate that, whatever they have proposed for High Court judges now, is just about $3,000. At least it's almost 300% above the current earning. And that's why I said it's a leap. But is it commensurate with what is obtainable on ground? No. Of course, it is too far from the Commonwealth pay of judges. But we still thank the President.
Still talking about remuneration of judicial officers, what's the update about the pensions and gratuities of judicial officers? Has it been paid, or is it being paid timeously?
It used to be paid timeously, at least by the last day of your work. But it happened at our time that some judges who retired ahead of me in 2022 were not paid. But after the Honorable Justice Taiwo and Honorable Justice Toyin Taiwo, the couple, the judicial couple, which channels, of course, I was a beneficiary of the response of Lagos State. Once that interview was aired, I think they cleared the backlog because I received my pay within few weeks of retirement. And I want to assume that's the trend, but I really don't know. But I got mine within few weeks of retirement. The adequacy of the pension is something else entirely, but I don't want to speak on that because we have cases in court by some retired judges.
Away from issues of judicial officers, let's talk about the International Women's Month. We know that March is the International Women's Month, and March 10 was the day for International Women Judges. How do you think that women are faring in the legal profession? It appears that more women are attracted to the bench. Do you know why?
I am not in a position to speak about if there's any barrier into climbing at the bar level. But from the judicial point of view, there's none, at least from Lagos State perspective. Once you are qualified and, of course, you scale through the interview, whatever, you get the appointment as a judge, and, of course, it is left for you to now perform. You know, that's all I know. There are no barriers at all from my own personal experience. None. The only barrier is getting there. So whichever way you climb to that level, you just need to perform. Lagos State is the only state where you have non-indigens being judges. It's a melting pot. But even go to Ogun State there. Once you want to collect the form, they ask you which local government. Once you say Lagos or somewhere, that's the end. And from Ogun State up to the north, that's the way it is. Even in the letter from NJC, the state judiciaries are to employ indigenes of that state. But there's no adherence to that in Lagos State. If you take statistics of judges on the bench of the High Court of Lagos State, Lagos indigenes are in the minority. No discrimination at all. Once you qualify, whether you are coming from the bar, but more importantly, once you are coming from the magistracy, it doesn't matter which state you are from.
Did you always want to be a judicial officer, and why?
That's a good question. I am a child, a daughter of business people. My father, with two others, were the only importers of toys in Nigeria at his time. My mother traded in clothes, laces, you know, and of course what they call South fabric now. So my environment was dominated by successful women. My father's cousins were Janet Fakos. These were rich women at their time. I wanted to be like them. So despite being brilliant in school, I told my mom, you know, I would say to Yoruba, Ojani Matao, that is, I'm going into business because I wanted to be successful. I've seen my mother's cousins who were lawyers, who were judges, who were PAMSECs in service. And my mom, yes, they lived at Tukoyi, but of course I knew they were living in rented or leased apartments for their tenure. Once they leave service, that's the end of such houses. So I don't want that. I wanted to be successful. And I thought the way out is through selling maybe laces or jewelry. And of course, I ventured into it. But my parents were not quite pleased with me. So at the end of the day, they got me, after I had my daughter, to go to England for a 1-year course, thinking in today's balance to reset my brain. Of course, they did, but I was still convinced the way out for me was trading. So I went, I came back, and I still insisted. Then, of course, my mother had to play with me. Oh, Sherry, for people to know that you actually learned something for the period you were in England, go and get a job. So I got a job in Elder Dempster. And by the side, I was still going to National Supply. I was still going to get all the allocations of all this. I think we used to call it something commodity at that time. And of course, there was a ready market for it. I was making good money, still going to work to please my parents. At a point, one of my aunties in Ikorodu, who was working at ITT then, got me to ITT. So I worked with ITT briefly. And again, I left the place because I was not satisfied and ended up into full-time trading. I had a shop where, of course, I was buying from National Supply, I was buying from Goshawk, I was buying from PZ, I was buying from Tate and Lai sugar and all that. One day I got to my shop. It was during General Buhari's time. They had first opened the store. And of course, that was how I lost capital and my goods. And it's like, what do? I called one of my friends who was working at Society General, and she just said, oh, there's a lawyer who is a good customer of ours who is looking for a secretary. Would you like to work? I said, okay. I got there. It was Chief Bola Adejepe of blessed memory. He interviewed me. And it's like, Sherry, are you sure this is what you should be? I looked at him and it's like, no, I want to be a trader. He said, no, you ought to be a graduate. You sound so intelligent for this job you are doing, but I will employ you. And for my period with Chief Adejepe, there was no month he would not say, please come and go to the university. Eventually I did. And that was how I went to Unilag and studied law. And of course, went to the Nigerian Law School. So it was Chibola Adejepe who made me to read law after 5 years of pressure. But I have no regrets that I read law.
You obviously didn't face any bias in your climb to the top of the profession. But let's look at women in governance. The numbers are still very few. Do you think that, like some people have argued, it's time to legislate for more women participation in governance? Is it even possible to legislate on that kind of issue?
I think before I respond, I will want us to avert our mind to Section 42 of the Constitution. The right is that as a citizen, there should be no discrimination based on gender. If you legislate to say, for example, affirmative action, 33% must be there. We have discriminated against the male gender. Is it fair? Is it right? And I always believe that it's not right to trust things on people's lap. Let us struggle for it. But I would also share the comment of the Iyolaja Ikorodu, who is also late now. I was a guest speaker at FEDA Ikorodu program during maybe International Women's Day a few years back. I sat next to the mama and I said, Mama, okay, part of my speech was, I think the topic was subjugation of women. So one of my closing remarks was that, look at this gathering. We are mainly women. So it was like, why are we not voting for our gender? The mama sat next to me and he just said, Sister me, how can we? You are here speaking. If you are a politician now, you will speak, we will follow you. Once you enter, we won't have access to even enter your compound. Talk less of see you. that most of the men are not like that. That she gave me a clear example of Ikorodu women in governance. Of course, I won't mention names. So it's like, why would we vote for them? That's the problem. So I gave you this example for us to know how to address the issue. Once we put ourselves forward to be voted for, we promise to serve these people. We should not create distance. So I think we need to reorientate ourselves as women, whether as voters or as somebody to be voted for. And then we should not see ourselves being superior to them. Yes, we are, but we need to be humble so that these people will carry them along, give them the opportunity. I don't subscribe to those in governance allowing voters to come and be collecting money. I don't believe in that, but whether you are using constituency money or whatever, let's do it for something productive and not sharing the cash or giving Okada or a raw lotta or hairdressing equipment. No. There are too many things we could do. Set up cottage industries where people will be employed, and then we can turn around the economy of the community and, of course, ultimately the state.
Thanks for staying tuned. The Nigerian Bar Association's Women Forum has held its 4th annual General Conference and International Women's Day event. One of the highlights of the opening ceremonies was the keynote address delivered by Bolanle Austin Peters, the founder of Bar Productions and the foremost creative institution, Terra Culture. We have this report from that event up next. The hall here is packed full of women. Women from all over the country representing different fields and professions. They're here to celebrate and encourage themselves and to share perspectives on the theme of the conference, Beyond the Balance Sheet, Redefining Success for Women in Law.
In my view, the theme is so apt, especially in the legal profession, where the scales of justice often seem to be tipped against female lawyers, as female lawyers most of the time often have to work twice as hard as their male counterparts to be recognized. We at the Nigerian Bar Association, we recognize that success is not actually confined to our billable hours or the profit that we make, but it's the impact that how we impact the lives of others, the support we render to our fellow colleagues, and more than anything, the lasting legacy that we all hope to leave behind.
And with these words, the chairperson of the Conference Planning Committee, Senior Advocate of Nigeria, Folashade Ali, set the ball rolling for the many interesting conversations that followed from the women gathered here. The chairperson of the NBA Women's Forum also speaks about the essence of the conference.
We are about the well-being and empowering the female lawyer for success, because more often than not, women are marginalized, women are set aside, women are overlooked when we are the best person for the job. And it's our decision in the NBA Women's Forum to ensure that never again will we be overlooked.
One of the major highlights of the event was the keynote speech. The keynote speaker, a celebrated storyteller, reminded our audience about the exploits of one woman, Fumilayo Ransom Kuti.
This woman single-handedly mobilized thousands, hundreds of thousands of women to challenge illegal taxation in Abeokuta in the 1950s. One woman. Why were they taxing women more than men, and also putting in arbitrary taxation? Because women were the sources of income in Abeokuta. But she changed it and made the laws to be reversed to bring in women to start sitting on the council so that women's voices could be heard when decisions were being made. Now, why am I telling you about Fumilayo Ransom Kuti? I'm telling you about Fumilayo Ransom Kuti because if you look at her balance sheet, you will be sure of one thing. She probably didn't have the billions and the millions that you will consider a success story today in Nigeria. So, in recognizing that it is International Women's Day, this is a month for women, I want to talk about the most successful women. Us, the mothers, who raise giants, who raise children, who are the ones that raise the society that we're living.
And for her, this is what success means.
Success is about liking yourself, liking what you do, and how you do it. It is what you have decided makes you tick, what makes you happy. If you're a success story being a homemaker, then you are a success story. It can't be about the balance sheet. If you're a successful person in your mind, happy, dancing, and not being a lawyer, it's okay.
And just before we go, a quick recap of some of the top legal stories in the news.
We begin with the report that the Federal High Court sitting in Abuja has denied bail to the leader of the proscribed indigenous people of Biafra, Nnamdi Kanu. Kanu, who was brought to the court, has been in the custody of the Department of State Services, DSS, since his arrest in June 2021 and was hoping to secure his freedom. But in her ruling, Justice Binta Nyako, who denied him bail, held that the court would only grant an accelerated hearing in the matter. She therefore ordered the prosecution to call its first witness. Reacting to the ruling, counsel to Kanu, Aloy Ejimako, expressed his displeasure. He said the defense team cannot go on with the proceedings if they have not been given an opportunity to speak with their client. He also alleged unfair treatment of his client, which he said contravened the Nigerian constitution. Kanu, who was allowed to address the court, said he is suffering from cognitive heart disease. He also told the judge that he has not been getting the best treatment in the custody of the DSS. He asked to be moved to Kuje prison or placed on house arrest. But his pleas were rejected by Justice Nyako, who subsequently adjourned the case to April 17, 2024 for commencement of trial. At the same Federal High Court in Abuja, another judge, Justice James Omotosho, has refused to grant an ex parte motion filed by the Deputy Governor of Edo State, Philip Shaibu, seeking an interim order to stop the impeachment process by the state's House of Assembly. In the suit, Shaibu sought an order of the court restricting the defendants from commencing any process or setting up any panel of investigation for his removal, pending the hearing of a motion on notice. He also sought an interim injunction restraining the defendants from interfering with the subject matter of the originating summons filed in the suit targeted at his removal from office as the Deputy Governor of Edo State, pending the hearing of the motion on notice, among other reliefs. However, the court in its ruling declined the Deputy Governor's request. In Ogun State, the High Court sitting in Abeokuta and presided over by Justice Abiodun Akinyemi has admitted as evidence Ladi Adebutu's account opening forms along with his statements of account. Adebutu, the candidate of the People's Democratic Party in the March 18, 2023 governorship election in Ogun State, and some members of his party are standing trial for alleged vote buying and money laundering perpetrated during the poll. A bank official who testified gave insight into how Adebutu ordered 200,000 prepaid cards and funded the account about 48 hours before the election. His counsel, Senior Advocate of Nigeria, Godi Uche, objected to the admissibility of the documents on the grounds that they were not certified and that no proper foundation was laid for its relevance. The judge, however, agreed with the prosecuting counsel, Senior Advocate of Nigeria, Rotimi Jacobs, that there is no legal requirement that private documents must be certified. The court held the documents are private documents that require no certification. The trial judge further held that the prosecution witness made reference to the certificate of compliance pursuant to Section 84 of the Evidence Act. The documents were admitted as exhibits and the matter was adjourned till 2nd and 3rd of May 2024 for further hearing. In Lagos, the cross-examination of a deputy director from the Lagos State Ministry of Youth and Social Development, Mr. Yakubu Abisogun, in the trial of the principal and some staff members of Christian School Okwebi, Lagos, over the death of Whitney Adeniro, a 12-year-old student of the school, continued before Justice Oyindamola Ogala of the Lagos High Court, Ikeja. while answering questions under cross-examination from one of the defense counsel, Senior Advocate of Nigeria, Olukayode Enitan. The witness testified that Agege Stadium, where Christian School held its inter-house sports competition, was owned by the Lagos State government. The witness also admitted that the stadium rented out to the school lacked emergency facilities in case of any accident or emergency. On the 9th of February 2023, Christian School, Okwebi, Lagos, organized an inter-house sports at the Agege Sports Stadium for its students, and during the inter-house sports, one of the students, Whitney Omodeshola Adeniran, aged 12, was said to have been electrocuted. A doctor who examined her shortly after she was rushed to a nearby hospital said she was brought in dead. And we round off with a report that the director of the Lagos State DNA and Forensic Center, Dr. Richard Somiari, has told the coroner inquiring into the cause of death of late Nigerian singer Ilerioluwa Aloba, popularly known as Mohbad, that the results of an autopsy conducted on the deceased body would be ready in the next 3 to 4 weeks. Somiari gave the assurance while testifying before the coroner, Magistrate Adedayo Shotobi. The witness was cross-examined by the defense counsel in the inquest. The forensic expert also assured the public of adequate security and monitoring of samples for the autopsy. The coroner, Magistrate Shotobi, has adjourned further proceedings in the inquest to April the 15th.
And this is where we adjourn proceedings for today. Do remember to check out the Channels TV website for a replay of this episode of the program, as well as past episodes. Please also send in any feedback via our social media handles. I am Shola Shirley. Thank you for watching and see you next week.